Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are discussing the series I started just the other day on my channel regarding NHL teams with the brightest future. And as you can tell, we are discussing, yes, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'll be alongside guest John from Hot Take Hockey. If you don't know him, make sure to check him out after this video. One of the best hockey YouTubers there is currently on YouTube itself. I was fortunate enough to be on his channel a couple months ago, which really helped me out when the Rangers won the lottery and my reaction there, so I can't thank him enough. But we're going to break down the Toronto Maple Leafs, everything there is to know about them, their current roster, how they stack up now with their offseason moves, if any more offseason moves may happen this year, their prospect pool, everything there is to know there, and everything coming in together as to why they are so coveted, not just now, but long term when it comes to having one of the brightest futures in all the NHL. So without further ado, let's get right into this video.
So, yes, I'm John from Hot Take Hockey. I think obviously I'm a Leafs fan. I've been a Leafs fan for so long, and I think I am pretty knowledgeable. I think I can talk a lot about this team. But my channel's for all 31 teams. So, of course, thank you for that shout out, Tyler. If you want to check out my channel, I really appreciate that. And I hope, when I shared your reaction on my channel, it brought you some new subscribers. But no, I'm excited for the video. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, that was awesome. I was like, especially because my channel's changed so much over these past couple of months, that was really the starting point, which is great for me. Like, as a Rangers fan, having that happen with Lafreniere, it's just a really cool experience. So yeah, no, thank you enough for being here. But let's talk about your Leafs, because when I started the series and I knew I had to talk about Toronto because there's so much to love about this roster, not just now but long term, I thought about you right away. So when you look at what has happened with them thus far, obviously falling short again, not having a deep playoff run in quite some time now, but the promise is still definitely there with this roster, and Kyle Dubas has definitely shaked up things quite a bit this offseason. So what are your thoughts on everything that has really happened thus far?
I like it. I think I wasn't expecting anything big, even though after the loss, it was, even though people called it the COVID Cup and it was a different style tournament, it was a different style playoff. I obviously wanted my team to do well. Did I underestimate the Blue Jackets? No, but I do think it was a series that the Leafs should have won. They're the better team on paper. They're the better team, obviously, during the season, but that is a different story when it comes to the playoffs. The Jackets showed that against the Lightning. The Jackets showed that against the Leafs, and Tortorella is a great coach. And the Jackets actually showed the Leafs what they do need, and that's consistent goaltending. That's a very balanced defense group that brings everything to the table, and different perspectives, different aspects in their forward group. What the Lightning added, you saw with the Lightning, it was Coleman, it was Barclay Goodrow, it was Yanni Gordon, that third line. You see that with the Blue Jackets, with guys like Boone Jenner and Bjorkstrand, and guys that bring that two-way game, some guys that can bring the physicality. So, the Leafs didn't have that, and they made some moves to bring that in. And I think the Wayne Simmonds one was probably my favorite, 1.5 per. I don't think you can go wrong with this signing.
I thought
even if Wayne
move.
Simmonds is a guy that plays on your fourth line, like 1.5 million, like when they signed Matt Martin for 2.5 million, you're getting more offense. You're getting more on both sides of the ice, in my opinion, from
that
Wayne
net
Simmonds.
Front presence too.
Exactly. And he's a guy that we saw with Philly. I'm not saying on the number one power play unit. I think they're going to stick with the top five guys, but maybe on that second power play unit, he's that net front presence, as you just said. And I like the TJ Brody. I personally wanted Chris Tanev, but it's a matter of like the positives, negatives. Brody's a guy that's probably going to play an 82-game season. Tanev's a guy that's at risk for getting injured any year, right?
Yeah, there's more longevity with Brody.
Yeah, for sure. And you saw over the past decade, this is a guy that played with Giordano for so many years. And honestly, we'll talk about it more, but I have difference in opinions. I think maybe Brody ends up with a guy like Muzzin, more just because of the fact that if you're looking for a partnership or a duo to really face the top lines every given night, you saw that with the Flames. Giordano and Brody were doing exactly that. And I would actually argue Muzzin has a lot more of the traits of Giordano than Reilly does. Just more of that two-way game, getting physical, the slap shot, all that kind of stuff. Muzzin and Brody would bring a lot of what the Giordano and Brody pairing did. So I think Brody could be a great pairing for or partner for Reilly. I love Reilly. He's my favorite player. He has been since drafted. But I do think Reilly, as we've seen, can adapt to different partners. I think Muzzin and Brody might be a great aspect. And we'll talk about it more. I'll let you ask me some questions. But Thornton, Boyd, VC at 900K. I love what they've
Jimmy
done so
VC.
far.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really good signing by the Leafs, you know, like as not just a hockey fan, but a Rangers fan in particular. Like, I think that his opportunities really weren't there much with Buffalo. He has had multiple seasons of just under 20 goals. If he gets any playing time in that top 6, which I kind of seems doubtful. I mean, I love Soup. I think he has a better opportunity, especially on that left side over VC, gain more playing time. But if the opportunity presents itself, if he's alongside, say, whoever, whether it's Matthews or JT at any point in time, I can guarantee that he's going to make some things happen.
Yeah, I mean, Buddy is like, when we're talking about Hobie Baker and we talk about the numbers he put up at Harvard and the teammate of Alex Kerfoot, that guy, those guys ripped together in Harvard. So I'm thinking, yeah, you could have a line of maybe, for example, VC, Kerfoot, and Simmonds. And maybe that's your third line that makes some noise like the Lightning third line. I'm not saying they're as good, but there's combinations that can be worked out here. And while maybe people think it's set in stone right now that it's going to be Nylander, Matthews, Hyman, Marner, Tavares, Mikheyev to start, maybe Keefe shakes things up. You never know. I think there's a lot of combos here. And obviously when you have vets like Thornton, Spezza, they can play in any situations. We really don't know what the Leafs have in Barabanov right now. Boyd's a veteran piece, or a depth piece, I guess. And there's a couple other question marks. I mean, Korshkov right now is having a great start to his KHL season. Yep. So he's another guy that could maybe step in. And then you have other depth guys like Malgin and Patan. So there's other guys in the picture, right? But I think Keefe has a lot to work with in the forward group for sure.
Yeah, no, I think when you look at everything that's transpired with not just how this Leafs team currently racks up, but with these offseason moves, like as you touched, just my personal opinion on everything, I thought Dubas, I've been very up in the air about just from everything that's happened over these past couple of years. When we look at, for instance, the Tyson Barrie trade, as soon as that happened, from just a normal hockey fan's perspective, I did not understand it one bit. I understood the fact that yes, the Leafs need a right-hand shot, and bringing in Barrie coming off of a career year wouldn't seem like a bad idea. But at the end of the day, we all know the Leafs have needed defense. And regardless of it's just from the defense itself, having their forwards in the bottom 6 that actually know how to play a strong two-way game. So bringing in Barrie, especially giving up Kadri and all the pieces in there, I never liked that personally. And I was really flabbergasted to an extent that happened. And I was like, is Dubas ever going to get around here and finally focus on more defensively sound defensemen outside of Muzzin, for instance? And then he did just that. I thought that Brody signing was perfect. Even with him being a left-handed shot, obviously can play that right side. He did have a down year when it came to point production with the Flames, as we know, but take into account with the Flames, with relieving Bill Peters and then bringing in Jeff Ward, they have a different mentality there. I think they were definitely more defensively sound than they were focusing on offensive production. That's why all their top guys, including Johnny Hockey, had quite a down year in part, given their production. And then if you look at other guys too, whether it's Zach Bogosian, I don't think that was a bad sign. Yes, it's Bogo, and yes, analytically speaking, there's nothing great there. But at the end of the day, you get a right-handed shot that brings some more grit to your lineup. Regardless of how you use him, I don't think it's going to hurt them much at all. Simmonds makes a lot of sense. Even with him being some more injury-prone, the difference between him, and you touch on as well, and say Clifford, for example, is that he's not just really that enforcer, that guy on your fourth line. He can provide offense, even if it isn't significant. The Leafs don't need it to be significant. They just need him to actually be a capable NHL player that basically isn't a pylon, if you will. Like, as a Rangers fan, seeing multiple years of Tanner Glass and Cody McLeod and all these other players in the fourth line, Michael Haley as of late, it always left me scratching my head. Why are these guys here if they're not going to contribute anything really at all besides just fighting or causing a havoc? So Simmonds made a lot of sense. I like the VC deal as well. They really get him below market value in my mind. I think he could have at least gone $1 million with other teams. So I thought that was a great sign for them. And then if you look at everything else that they've done, yes, it is a little bit of saying I like Kasperi Kapanen a lot. I've always been a fan of him, but they won that trade, no question, getting that first round pick, and then also getting the Penguins arguably their best prospect. And Hollander, you can't go wrong there. And then Andreas Janssen, who's really a great story because I believe he's a 7th round pick. And he had a great year in his rookie year. This past year, he's been dealing with injuries, as we both know. Devils really won that trade, obviously, but it all made sense why it happened. These aren't moves that are really going to detrimentally hurt the Leafs, because even while they were fully healthy and so stud offensively, we all know what's happened there, and it hasn't been much to this point, and it really is the time to focus on these holes that need to be addressed. So I really think Kyle Dubas has had a very strong offseason, probably the best that I've ever seen with him being GM. And I'm really excited to see what the Leafs go forward. Because if you look at how things rack up with them, you have Auston Matthews, you know this, 80 points last year, roughly 50 goals. You can't complain. He's an absolute monster. And then you have Mitch Marner, 67 points. And these guys are so young too, which is why I incorporated the Leafs, especially as one of the teams in this series, because yes, they're in this win now stage, but they're similar to the Avalanche, or to an extent the Rangers, in the sense of they're competing now, but they still have great young talent and a very strong prospect pool. Like, the Leafs have a much better prospect pool than I think a lot of people don't give them credit for. And then you look at Tavares, obviously 60 points in just under 70 games. The captain, he's still going to get it done for you. I like to see some more playoff production from him there, but at the same time, he really hasn't been bad either. Nylander, who's probably one of the more underrated players in the entire NHL because he's overshadowed by all these other studs, just under 60 points last year. I love his game. I really hope for Toronto's sake that they can keep him long term. We'll see what happens there. And then you have other guys, Hyman, who you can put anywhere in that lineup. Reminds me of Jesper Fast for the Rangers up until they just let him go to the Hurricanes, where you can put him anywhere in that top 9, even on that 4th line. And he will make that line better. He will not hurt it by any means. A sound two-way winner by far. And then if you look at all the other guys, I love Soup so much. I was watching that game against the Devils when he got hurt and had the lacerated wrist. It really bummed me out. I love his game. I think he's a huge steal. They just extended him, obviously, to 2 years. And then if you look at a healthy Morgan Reilly, one of the best puck-moving defensemen in the NHL. And then I'm really excited for the Leafs. Like, I'm not a Leafs fan. Obviously, but I really admire what they've been doing. And really, what Dubas has done this offseason is a huge eye-opener, in my opinion, that he's finally getting it and that he's finally committing to focusing on the holes that immediately need to be addressed for this team in a win-now stage.
Yeah, I'm with you. I guess just to quickly touch on a couple things you talked about. With the Kadri trade, it was tough. For me, I didn't think it was like the worst thing ever when it happened. I thought it was okay, just more because as a Leafs fan, and I always try to separate myself as a fan and just analyze the situation and just kind of evaluate. But at the time, Kadri got suspended 2 years in a row, and I get maybe it was just against Boston, but I think he was overcompensating. He was overcompensating because nothing else was happening. No one else was standing up for their teammates. No one else was getting that physical game going. So it was the wrong move, but I think in Dubas's mind, it was a new fit. And in terms of value, it wasn't the worst thing ever. Barry didn't pan out, obviously, but if you think about Barry in any given year and as a rental, and they got him for a full year, he's probably worth what, maybe a second or first round pick. For production. Sure. And then Kerfoot's no bum. I mean, he had his injury issues, but he's a guy that could probably put up 40, 50 points.
Oh, yeah, and to have him as, say, your third-line center is nothing to complain about.
So here's the thing. The Leafs, I think Kadri would have been great for what they're needing right now, and it sucks. For me, was it a bad trade? Yes. But now if you look at this Kapanen trade, it's a different kind of trade with different value. Like, what they got for Kapanen, they probably could have got the exact same thing for Kadri. A middle first-round pick and a prospect. Instead, they got two guys that could jump into the roster right away. Was that a long-term mistake? Of course. Now you're looking at Barry's gone, and Kerfoot's not exactly what you want, but he's productive. So that's why I like this Kapanen trade. Even if Kapanen goes to Pittsburgh, as Kadri went to Colorado and does well, they still have Amirov, who I really like. I actually said in my mock draft, I wanted them to take Amirov over the defenseman because I've always said in the NHL, we're not in the NFL here. We're drafting an O-lineman 5th overall. We're in the NHL where you draft the best player available. For me, it's always been that. You don't draft positionally, you draft the best player available. For me, this was a forward-driven draft. You draft the best forward. You draft the forward that you think has the most potential in the long run. So for me, it wasn't Braden Schneider. It wasn't Caden Gooley. It was the best player available. And I like the comparisons. I like the style of Amirov. I watched a little bit of game with him in the KHL, and man, I like him a lot. So
yeah,
I said that.
We'll definitely break down the prospect pool because I have a lot to talk about regarding him. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think another thing too, just to touch on the draft, I guess, quick before we go forward with the prospect pool. Oh, and one more thing too, Joe Thornton, beautiful signing. Nothing wrong there. I think having him in Spezza is just, I think that's awesome. And I remember when I covered the video, had a lot of people complain that like this made no sense for the Leafs. Like basically, like how does this not make sense for the Leafs? $700K,
and it's awesome. It's Thornton with the Leafs. Like here's the thing:
for a guy who can still put up 30 to 40 points easily.
Like who cares? It's $700K. It's the most minimum you can get. Even if Buddy stands in the press box every other night, it's $700K. Like I've watched the Leafs pay Martin Marincin $750K for that guy to actually go on the ice and be a bum. Thornton's actually going to do something on and off the ice.
Oh, for sure.
I'm tired of those lame conversations because anyone that knows how to win a cup or how to do successfully, you have to have all aspects of the game. And that's what the Leafs were missing, right? They were missing the physicality, they were missing the defensive game, and they were missing leadership and characters in that room.
And they brought it all in one offseason, and they're not even done yet.
And they're not done yet. And I think, honestly, as the season goes on, and that's why I still think Dubas is probably going to maybe like stay put. But I do think I wouldn't be surprised like mid-season if he's going after like a right shot defenseman to add to the piece, or if he's going for another physical presence for that third line. Because look what the Lightning did. They added both Gaudreau and Coleman ahead of the deadline. And look how much that positively affected them going into the cup run.
And everyone was mocking them and saying, why are you giving up these first round picks for these guys that are definitely not worth the first round pick per se? But I'm like, here's the thing. If Tampa goes all in and wins it, then Brisebois looks like a genius. It's like Columbus last offseason with bringing in both Duchesne and Zingle. If they go all in and they win it all, you did exactly what the ideal dream for a GM is to do at a deadline going all in a season. And Tampa actually did that. So I can't mock him there at all. And they still have a very strong prospect pool as it is. They're great at drafting in middle, later rounds. So Tampa's going to be fine without those first round picks. So yeah, no. And same thing applies with Toronto with anything that they do, say, going forward. But yeah, no, when you look at them now too, between the draft, I love the draft. I really think Toronto had a very strong draft. And I was doing a mock draft with my buddy Steven, Staff Boy Steven, that I've done multiple videos with. He's like a prospect guru. He lives in Vienna, Austria, and he like travels all around Europe to interview and basically like to an extent scout a lot of these top tier or lower tier prospects, either for the Rangers or just for all the players leading in the draft. And he even met Amirov too, and he was explaining how the Leafs have a lot of scouts like for Russia for Russian players, especially in the KHL. They've been emphasizing that a lot over these past couple years. So he expected them. He went with an off-the-board pick and expected the Leafs to go with Shakir Mukhamadullin with that 15th overall pick, and he wasn't far off because Shakir went to the Devils. But then they got the Russian. It was just a winner in Amirov, and he's been great. Amirov's had what, 8 points in 18 games to start the season for the KHL. So he's been doing really strong. He's so flashy, he has so much potential, and I'm really excited to see what he can do, and if he hits the NHL level sooner rather than later, because he can speak fluent English, which is another key thing, which may not seem like a big deal, but when you can get over that barrier as well, going into North America, that's only going to bode him well. And then if you look at other guys, Mikko Lehtonen, I touched on that obviously when the signing happened months ago. That was great. 26 years old, established defenseman. Yes, he is definitely more offensively minded, but he might really bring a splash at such a low value cost for the Toronto Maple Leafs that can essentially do what Barrie did, if not better. So I think that's another factor to consider. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Hollander, you can't go wrong with that deal, of course, with Kapanen. They really stole the show there. He has 3 points in 8 games so far in the SHL. He looks like he very well could have a solid future, possibly being a bottom 6 centerman, I would say, at this point in time. And then Nick Robertson, man. Nick Robertson is a stud. I was really excited to see him when he actually cracked the roster for them in that qualifying round. Had a goal, as we all know. And no, he's a guy who I think everyone should be watching next season for sure. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities in this Leafs lineup. And if you go down the list, like, what's your thoughts on them and Sandin, for example? Because Sandin is a guy who I'm really curious to see if he cracks the roster, or is he going to basically play another year in the minors, or if he stay loaned.
Yeah, I think I was a defenseman growing up. So, and I mean, I've watched enough hockey to know, and a lot of people should know at this point, that defensemen, I mean, goaltending for sure, but defensemen take a lot of time to develop. Like, you don't really see most defensemen develop or become their real player, real self until 24, 25, 26. Of course, you have your outliers. You have your outliers like Miro Heiskanen and Provorov and like those kind of guys, right? So you have your outliers, but for the most part, you don't see the defenseman developing until 24, 25. So Sandin is like, what, 20? And Liljegren's 21, 22, or Sandin's turning 21. Like, these are guys that are still in their early 20s. So I don't think, like, here's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen with the AHL. We don't know if there's going to be like a taxi squad. We don't know how the format's really going to necessarily work.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But like, here's the thing. Like, if there's an AHL, then maybe Sandin starts there, but likely Sandin starts with the roster. If like the AHL is like, if there's question marks there, Liljegren's another piece. Like, he could get time, but right now the Leafs, I mean, you talked about Bogosian, like, they've added pieces to fill out their 7, like, defensemen. Like, you talk about, Reilly, Brody, Riley, Brody, Muzzin, Hull, Dermott, Lehtonen, and then Bogosian. So after that, then you go down the list: Sandin, Liljegren, Rosen. I mean, I guess I have to say his name, but I really don't want to talk about Marincin, but I like slide him down the depth chart. But like, yeah, they have a bunch of options. I guess the worry is like, Sandin, he stepped into the scene, and then, I mean, it pissed me off that he didn't see any time in the playoffs, but
that's usually the case when you have younger prospects that didn't like just full on wow them in a short stint during the season. Like, I felt the same way with Vitaly Kravtsov, for example, because he was brought in last second for the Rangers and he was with the roster. He didn't get any playing time in the qualifying round. It's not like it mattered because the Rangers got swept in 3. But nonetheless, that's like another instance where it's like, I really wish he could have gotten some playing time, just because there's really no reason why he couldn't, just to get that experience in. And I get where you're coming from with Sandin. It happens with every team every year with these coveted prospects.
Yeah, well, and I also like specifically think that, and I've always disagreed with this mentality, that Sandin would have played if they had a different kind of like defenseman, if they had a Brody, because the whole problem was Muzzin went down with the injury and they're going, okay, like, who's going to be on our PK now? Oh, well, the only tall guy that like has a long reach. Okay, Marincin, you got to play. And then this guy's in, like, he's playing like 18 minutes a night, 20 minutes a night. And we're like, what's going on here? Like, you shouldn't have a guy out there just because he can play penalty kill. Like, that's not a reason. I mean, again, I understand it, and they weren't planning on Muzzin getting injured. But like, I was even saying, like, if you're going to really put Marincin when Sandin's so much more effective in every other aspect of the game, because he's going to play 4 minutes a night on the penalty kill, if that, it's ridiculous. And I don't even know why I'm saying 4 minutes, because chances are you're not allowing more than 3 penalties in a game. So 3 minutes a night. So it's frustrating. But I do think Sandin will get his opportunity, and I'm not worried really about his development. I think the Leafs have gotten lucky lately, and I think some of it's luck, but some of it's also Dubas. And the one thing I'll say about since Dubas has come in, and if you look at Hunter and Lou Lamoriello, their drafting was horrible. Like 2016,
no question.
You look at Matthews, great. After that, what'd you do?
It's
you
not drafted like they had a difficult pick.
You drafted Korshkov over DeBrincat and Carter Hart. That's embarrassing. Since Dubas has come in and been the guy, man, drafting it's like, now I can actually look at like prospect list and actually have like faith that the Leafs are actually going to succeed in the draft. In the last 3 years, they've done it. They've absolutely done it in the last 3 years of drafting. And you see with Robertson, they don't have a first round pick, and they slip into the second and still get a guy that should have been a top 15 or top 20 prospect easily. So I'm really happy with what Dubas has done, really happy with the prospect system now. It's really nice to know that the Leafs have this great roster and they have guys like in the cupboards. They have guys like waiting in the wings, because that was the problem with the Leafs for the years. They would finish 8th, 9th, 10th place. They wouldn't make the playoffs, or they would just make the playoffs, whatever it was. And then they would do horrible in drafting. So what it was just mediocre after then garbage, mediocre team. But now they actually have this great team that is bringing in prospects every year. So this is a team that should be set for a long time.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you look further, just what Dubas has done, even take this draft class outside of that first round, their selection with Roni, and I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong,
Hirvonen.
Okay. Yeah, no, I thought that was a great pick for them. Really another steal where they landed him at. And he's another guy who he's had a strong start in this year in Liga. I believe he has 3 points in 8 games. Another example, yes, the Leafs didn't necessarily address grab any bigger body guys, for instance, but that's not their goal, especially as you mentioned. They weren't focusing on guys to bring in because it's not really going to factor anytime soon.
Exactly.
Outside of Robertson, because Robertson, really has been impressive. Robertson last year had he had roughly 90 points in 40 something games. So he's just been above expectations.
Oh, it's an outlier. And
exactly.
That's what I've tried to tell people. Some people just don't want to listen. When people were trying to say draft Braden Schneider, the Leafs have the defensive need now. They want an experienced defenseman now. They're not trying to draft an 18-year-old defenseman that's not going to be ready for 3, 4, 5 years. You've seen it. Look with Sandin and Liljegren, how high of a ceiling those guys had, but they're not necessarily ready for a top 4 role right now. Right?
Yeah.
So why would you expect an 18-year-old Braden Schneider to step onto the scene within the next couple of years?
No,
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and as a Rangers fan, they drafted Braden Schneider, obviously. I'm really excited for him. But here's the thing. A lot of people were scratching their heads, including myself, because when the Rangers had that pick, when they trade up, I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going for Hendrix Lapierre. I was booking it. I was manifesting it for over a week straight, hoping it would get into existence. But no, they go with Schneider. Everyone's like, why would they go with another right-hand defenseman? But at the same time, they just re-signed D'Angelo to a 2-year deal. Even if he plays the left side, he more than likely won't be with the Rangers long term. I could be wrong, but there's a strong possibility he won't. And then even with Niels Lundqvist coming into play, the Rangers' top prospect on the right side, they're going to have room by time Schneider comes into play, because it's not going to be anytime soon, more than likely. So exactly, going to your point as well, the defensemen definitely do take more time more often than not. And because the Rangers and plenty of other teams in the NHL have really coveted defensive prospects. Even look at the Avs with Bowen Byram, for example. Yes, he was a high draft pick, but no, it doesn't mean he's going to be in the NHL right away. Anything can happen. So you have to really be Erasmus Dahlin, at least when it comes to potential and expectation, to be able to hit the NHL right away in order for it to happen. Otherwise, you shouldn't expect these guys for, say, 2 to even 4+ years.
Yeah, and I also think it's the football fan and hockey fans overlapping, because that's what you've seen it. Football is so different. You draft positionally, right? You could reach for an O lineman, or you could reach for a defensive end, in the top 5, top 10, even though they're not as skilled as maybe the receiver that goes at 20th overall. I mean, you get it, right? Hockey's different. You go for the most skills on the board, or you're going to regret it after. And I know for a fact, when the Leafs drafted Luke Schenn back in 2008, they were looking for that big defenseman and skipped over quite a few guys that were, look at them now. So, the Leafs have learned. Dubas has learned. He's learned from decades of disappointment through drafting, through trading, through ownership of this Toronto Maple Leafs organization. 1967 is going to be thrown at Leafs fan base until that cup gets hoisted. So now they actually have potential where you look at the next 5-10 years, chances are they're going to do it. And obviously I hope they do it, because every year it doesn't happen. It gets more and more sad. So I hope it happens soon.
Yeah. If you look at the direction that they're in now, Dubas, if he didn't make the kind of moves he made this offseason, I would be very suspect as to what the future holds for Toronto, at least for the next couple years, if he's still in office. He did the exact opposite of what essentially he's been doing outside of the draft over these past couple years. So that was fantastic on his part. And now you have this Leafs team where, it's easy to forget at times just how young this core group is. They aren't going anywhere anytime soon. You have a lot of these guys that have yet to hit their prime. I don't believe Matthews has hit his prime, obviously. He's so young. Same things obviously can be said with Nylander and Marner. These are guys that are going to consistently be in the top of the league for offensive production year in and year out. And yeah, they have John Tavares. That's nice too, right? So then you throw him in the mix and then all the other factors. And before you know it, the Leafs are surely going to be in a spot where they're going to get past that first round. Boston... Do I expect Boston to be very good next year? Of course I expect Boston to be good, even with, say, Pasternak and Marchand not starting the year due to injury. But nonetheless, that's a team, for example, that's been your biggest nemesis over these past couple of years, but they're actually going to be on the decline sooner than later if they don't really try to make somewhat of a retool. Losing Krug, for example, and not having a replacement. They were hoping OEL, that didn't happen. So that is a huge blow on their defense. On top of everything else that's happening with them, they're going to keep competing, but the Leafs are in a situation where you just have to basically be patient at the end of the day, because surely they're going to get where they're going to want to be with this current group and this current prospect pool. I feel pretty confident in that, even though I'm not a Leafs fan. I've watched plenty of Leafs games, and from evaluating them and their players, it's very hard pressed to say that they're going to continue to be a first round exit over these next couple of years. It just is not going to happen.
Well, I hope it's a quicker process. And obviously people have a tough time understanding, but look at the last few teams that have won. Washington, first round exits or short playoffs for a decade. I've talked to Capitals fans that looked at the younger, like Backstrom, Ovechkin, Alex Semin days, Mike Green days, like 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. You go on. Like, they didn't win until 2018, and they had that skill for almost a decade. You look at the St. Louis Blues, how many moves they made when they had their TJ Oshie's and the Berglunds and the Kevin Shattenkirks. They had so many different looked rosters, and the Blues were great for so long. And then they won in 2019. And then you look at 2020 now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the best teams, or one of the most skilled teams of the past, or at least the second half of this past decade. But for majority of the decade, they were great. And they're a team that really got close a couple of years, obviously the Cup final, and then the Eastern Conference loss to the Capitals. But then they finally do it. It's a process for a lot of teams. And that's why I've said to people, and I'll probably make a video of my own, but you get that feeling that the next few teams up are teams like the Avalanche or teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then obviously the longer term or the long-term future teams that are going to be the next wave are possibly the Rangers, your team. So you kind of get that vibe with teams. And right now, when I think of those teams that are maybe next up to win over the next 5-6 years, the two teams popping in my head, obviously Vegas is ready to win now. They're waiting to win.
They have to win a cup.
Yeah. But in terms of the teams that have the potential to win now and the longer term future, I think Colorado and Toronto are right there. Vegas, as you just said, is right now because they have older guys and older guys that have big contracts. So they're more like now. They have like a 3-4 year window, where the Leafs have a lot of their guys still in their young 20s. So and they have a lot of guys in the cupboard. So they're looking okay.
Well, yeah, and another thing too, like if you look at Vegas, for example, and not to really touch much on other teams, but they're in a great spot right now. Financially, of course they're not, but that isn't their worry. They're all in, as we all know, and they're going to continue to be all in over these next couple of years without question. But what really could separate Toronto from Vegas and among other teams, for example, is the fact that they are a playoff contending team that really should have gone past this first round, in my opinion, to this point. But they are on the cusp of really becoming something great, given how young they still are. This is a core group, and a group that is truly going to be strong for the next decade. And that is what separates them with, say, Vegas, for example. Since coming in the league, they've been in a win now state since. You can't tell me over this next decade that I'm fully confident in Vegas being on the same level that Toronto is. We don't see it happening for good reason right now. So Toronto, Colorado, a great example. The Avs are just otherworldly. Joe Sakic is a wizard. I don't know why people keep hitting up his phone, but nonetheless, great things are going to happen with them. The Leafs, if you just look at everything that they've been through, all the spots, they've just really rounded out their roster. And I can't stress that enough, especially similar to the Tampa Bay Lightning in that aspect. You need these kind of guys, the guys that maybe leave you scratching your head a little bit as to why did you bring them in at first, but you have to realize you have your difference makers on this roster. You just need these glue guys to come in and really fill roundings out. And I think the Leafs bottom six is looking a lot better than what most anticipated to happen going into this offseason, given the assumption that they were going to make a lot of moves and try to free up a lot of cap space, that, this bottom six is going to look terrible. If you ask me, I think that bottom six looks perfectly fine as of right now, barring any other trades that say happen.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, in terms of what the Lightning did, I think, as I said, they could probably make one or two moves as the season goes along, but I don't think it's going to be disappointing for any fans if they go into next season with what they have right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think this team is in the right direction. I think this was, if not the best, one of Dubas's better offseason for sure. And it's a situation right now where it's another year. You bring back the core, even though, like I said, after the loss, I was yelling Nylander, Marner, like I was losing it at those guys because obviously their performances weren't to par. But I do think that it's going to take some time still. But it's hockey. It's the NHL. It's the most unpredictable league of the four major sports. And like for a lot of the years, we don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes, the best team like the Lightning, they did win, but they took a while to get there. So I think for the Leafs, it might take some time, or they might win next year or the year after. We don't know. But right now they're in a good spot. And I mean, a lot of people watched my reactions, my streams.
As did I.
I know a lot of people had a good time watching my pain, but I'm hoping that 1 year it's going to be a bunch of streams, a bunch of rounds where I'm actually going nuts and having a good time. And I'm hoping that's soon.
Yeah, I definitely think that's in your future, to say the least, or else we wouldn't be making this video. I feel pretty confident in all these things transpiring and actually coming to fruition. But I think we really hit every nail on the head when it came to talking about this Leafs roster, what is truly next for them, and exactly why they are so coveted. Because again, just to put everything in a nutshell, this Leafs team, they look great. They really do. I'm really happy. I'm honestly very happy to see them in the spot that they're in now. I wish them nothing but the best going forward, as do I do with basically every team in the AHL, outside of, maybe some specific ones, but we won't really talk about them because I'm neutral. But nonetheless, I really appreciate you, John, coming on the channel to talk about your Leafs. It means a lot. I'm really excited for what the future holds for this team. I'm really excited to see what Auston Matthews can do in another, hopefully, full season. He's the biggest guy to me that could really take this team over the edge, and hoping that he stays with Toronto long term. There's certain aspects of his game and his personality where, as long as everything goes right, he in my mind is that future captain for the Leafs outside of Tavares. That's just my personal opinion, though. If he does stay long term after that contract, because it's not an 8-year deal, as we all know. But thank you so much for being on here, John. If you want to touch anything else, go ahead. But besides that, just leave your handles as to know where people can find you.
Yeah, appreciate that. For the captain, a lot of people know this, but Reilly's my guy. I've always said Reilly's been through it all. He's had so many, I'll say garbage, but I don't want to be disrespectful, but he's had so many garbage defense partners, and he's gone through a lot of the.
He's been through it all.
Yeah, he's been through a lot of the bull with this team, but Reilly's my guy, and he's my favorite player for this team. But you can hit me up if you want to subscribe to my channel, Hot Take Hockey, on YouTube. Honestly, it's nice to interact with different YouTubers. I like genuine YouTubers. I like people that like to interact with the community. So Tyler, keep doing a good job here, bro. Keep it up. Thank you. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Hot Take Hockey, or at John Viveros _. That's my personal ones. You can do that. But yeah, I do a lot of stuff for Hot Take Hockey on YouTube. As I make this video, or as we make this video right now, I'm a lot's going on. My schedule's crazy right now, but I'm really excited about what is to come for the rest of the offseason, World Juniors, the NHL season. So hopefully hockey YouTube continues to grow. And as I said, if you're a hockey YouTube or hockey fan, check out some of the hockey YouTubers, whether it's my channel, Tyler's. There's a bunch of channels out there. So actually give it a chance. Hit that subscribe button. Maybe drop a like for them. Leave a comment. Interact with us. So I know we do put in the work, and we appreciate it. So thank you for having me, Tyler. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, couldn't have said it better. Yeah, no, thank you again, John. It means a lot. Keep up the great work, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, thank you to John again for coming on the channel and talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. It means a lot. Make sure to hit that subscribe and a like button, not just for myself, but him, obviously. Make sure to check him out. I'll have him in the description down below, but it means a lot. Thank you all so much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell. As always, help us reach 2K. We're so close to there, guys, but I know we'll surely get there because you guys are all awesome. And also, if you are interested in making a logo for the channel, I did start a contest. So if you know graphic design, if you're interested in designing a logo for me, and email it to me, I'll have that in the description. Check it out. I'll be having it up for 2 weeks depending on how many people enter, and whoever's logo I actually pick to be the next one on the channel, I'll be sending them a $25 Visa gift card. So there is some incentive there, guys, but make sure to let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, as always, regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs, your thoughts on them, how bright their future is, and stay tuned for the upcoming videos regarding this series. So thank you all again, guys, and I'll be back real soon.